Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Kmart, and I want to talk about some basketball. And today, we are going to be talking about the Boston Celtics and the expectations for this team as we move closer and closer to the start of the postseason. So, uh, to just sort of catch you up here, Boston is clearly one of the top teams in the league after an offseason where the team went pretty big. They acquired Kristaps Porzingis. They went out and got Drew Holiday. On top of that, they inked Jaylen Brown to a massive contract extension, and they effectively went out and spent the money and the resources to try and build a championship contender. And for the most part, they're living up to that so far, right? When these moves were made in the offseason, the thought process for a lot of people was already sort of leaning towards a championship or bust kind of mentality. But now, considering where we are getting close to the end of the regular season, that mindset has sort of evolved ever so slightly, right? We've moved into a position where it's not just anything short of a championship will be a disappointment for the Celtics. Now you start to look at this situation as anything short of a championship might just be considered a failure outright for this team. Now, the question is that a standpoint that is justified? And frankly, I think that it is, given the way that we've seen the Celtics perform so far this year. Just sort of give you the rundown, the Celtics have absolutely run away with the Eastern Conference. They were the first team in the entirety of the NBA to earn a playoff berth, and they should be the number one seed, barring an absolute collapse on their part. In fact, there is a scenario at play here, technically speaking, where if the Celtics sort of win out the next 3 or 4 games in their schedule, they could secure the number one seed in the Eastern Conference before any other team even secures a playoff spot in general. That is how far ahead Boston is. Of course, that scenario may not be 100% likely, but it's in play and could reasonably happen. So Boston is far and away the best team in the East. They are the only team in the Eastern Conference to have single-digit losses in conference. So they've only lost 7 games against other Eastern Conference teams. They've only lost 3 games at home all season long, and you're looking at a playoff scenario where, as the number one seed, they're going to have a home court advantage throughout the entirety of the Eastern Conference playoffs and potentially into the NBA Finals as well. And then you look at the Celtics from a statistical standpoint. They're top in the league in terms of offensive rating, and they're second in terms of defensive rating. They lead the league in things like three-pointers made and three-point attempts. They lead the league in rebounding. They're top 5 in points, 3-point percentage, field goals made, etc. So they have an elite offense capable of really going toe-to-toe with any other team in the league. But meanwhile, that defense is, well, pretty elite as well. They're second in field goal percentage, third in 3-point percentage, second in blocked shots, and they give up the fewest free throw attempts and free throws made in the league. So the offense is strong from outside. They shoot high percentages. They are a high-scoring team. The defense forces teams into, for the most part, bad shots, right? Second in field goal percentage, third in 3-point percentage, and they don't give up too many of those sort of free opportunities at the line through their fouling. So you really do need to be fast-paced, but also high volume, but also efficient enough on the offensive end to get through Boston, and very few teams can do that. On the offensive side of the ball, the Celtics have a pretty balanced attack. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kristaps Porzingis are all averaging over 20 points this season, and they've got 5 players in total on that Boston roster who are averaging double figures. So the star players kind of lead the way, but which of the 3 stars sort of shines on which particular night is something that can vary, right? So if one of those guys, Tatum, Brown, or Porzingis, is having sort of an off shooting night, the other 2 can be, for the most part, relied upon to pick up the slack. So if you're playing defense against the Celtics, you can't try and just target down one guy because there's two other members of that trio who could potentially burn you. And for the most part, the key pieces here for the Celtics have remained mostly healthy, right? There are some questions about Porzingis. He's missed around 20 games or so. He's got some lingering sort of ailments, but the Celtics expect him to be back and active in the near future, and presumably healthy for the team's playoff run. So, long story short, this is effectively the best that the Celtics have been from both a record standpoint and a statistical standpoint in the sort of Tatum and Brown era. Which is kind of saying something, because that era has included quite a lot of playoff appearances, but hasn't gotten the team a championship yet. Since the 2017-2018 season, the first season that Tatum and Brown played together in Boston, the Celtics have recorded, chronologically speaking, a conference finals loss, a second round loss, another conference finals loss, a first round loss, an NBA finals loss, and then most recently, a conference finals loss again. So they've gotten close repeatedly, right? But haven't quite been able to get over the hump. Now we start talking about sort of a ticking clock here for the Celtics, because a lot of fans of the team in particular always like to point to the relative youth of the team's stars, right? Tatum is 26, Brown is 27. A lot of people sort of use that as a defense for having come close multiple times and not winning. These guys are still young, right? They're not cresting over the hill of being 30 years old. They still have time. Yeah, they've sort of fallen short in the past, but they're going to have more opportunities. And that is true. That is a very sort of patient outlook, and maybe a slightly more mature one as well compared to some of the other takes. However, this season is beginning to change that from my estimation, right? It is true. They're still young. They still have time. But the financial commitments that the Celtics have now made are really kind of wiping that point away, so to speak, right? And really putting more of an emphasis on needing to get this done as soon as possible. You take a look at the roster situation for the Celtics. They have 4 players who are each making over $30 million. Those 4 being Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, and Holiday. Collectively, those 4 guys are making $137.3 million this year. Next season, those same 4 players are going to make a combined $153.2 million. Now, the luxury cap is somewhere in the, I want to say like 165 million range, right? Give or take. And 153.2 million of that is going to be dedicated to just those 4 players: Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, and Holiday. Now, you take a look at the rest of the lineup. You tack on nearly $20 million for Derek White's contract, just shy of $10 million for Al Horford, somewhere in the realm of $6 to $7 million for Peyton Pritchard. Then you fill out the rest of the bench, and the Celtics are going to have a massive tax bill headed their way. There is no chance that they remain even close to that luxury tax threshold, right? They are going to exceed it by a sizable margin. And the Celtics are going to have to be okay with that, right? If you want to look at the blueprint that the Celtics might be following here, you look to the Golden State Warriors. That was their strategy at the height of the sort of trio of Steph, Clay, and Draymond, where they were at the height of their power, and obviously before Clay's injury. The idea here of sign the guys, keep everyone there, pay through the nose, and worry about the price tag after the championships have been won. And that is now what the Warriors are dealing with, right? They won the championships. They established themselves as definitely a force for multiple years. Some people debate whether it's a quote-unquote true dynasty or not. I'm not here for that discussion, but they made their mark. They won their championships. Now the bill's coming due, and they're dealing with the consequences. The Celtics might look to do the same thing, to pay all this money, to get Tatum and Brown signed long-term, to bring in Porzingis and Holiday and all the bench pieces and role players that they need to make a championship run, and worry about the price of those moves later. But you need to win. You have to get the championships to make that mindset work. The Warriors did it. Now the Celtics need to do it too. And yes, all of those guys are signed for 2 to 3 years, some of them even more in terms of the contract. So it is not literally a situation where you have rentals and you have to win this year. But if you combine the money that they've spent this year with the fact that those costs are only going to increase in the future, combine that with the repeated sort of inability to get over the hump in the playoffs and get to that championship, and then take all of that and sort of put it together with the statistical excellence of this version of the Celtics being one of the best teams in the league, being the number one team in the Eastern Conference, being miles and miles ahead of the second place team in the East, it kind of has to be this year, because moving forward, it is almost guaranteed that you will not be in as advantageous a position as you are right now. This really does feel like the Celtics' best shot to win the championship, and because of that, I would say that if they don't do it, with all the excellence of the regular season, with a team stronger than any of the rosters that we saw from them over the past 5 to 6 years, if they can't win it this year, it really does need to be considered a failure, because they have built the team, they have spent the money, they have committed to it, and it appears that they're poised for that success. They just need to go out and get it. So we'll have to see. At this point, I think anything short of a championship is absolutely a disappointment, but I would go that one step farther to call it a failure, because they've just been so good all season long that they've forced us to shift our own expectations for them, right? They've played too well to just be okay with, a deep run or another conference finals loss. They have to go out and win the championship this year. But that is really just my opinion. Please feel free to let me know what you think. Do you agree? Are the Celtics really in sort of championship or failure mode this season? Do you think a little bit more leeway should be given to them? Do you think that they do win the championship this season, or is there someone in that Eastern Conference bracket that you think might just be able to come in and knock them off in a 7-game series? And which team is that? Because it's looking pretty tough for anyone to get the better of the Celtics at the moment. But either way, please feel free to let me know what you think. Other than that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.